Right. So, as promised, we do have somebody who I've got a lot of respect for because of the work that she's doing. But I'm not going to prejudice this talk by giving you my views about her more than that. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Shivani Misra, so who I've known for a long time, simply as Shivani. So, Shivani, um, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, people can obviously Google you and find you who you are or read your Twitter feed or whatever, but who are you?
Thanks, Partha. Yeah, so I'm Shivani. I'm a diabetes consultant, actually a consultant in metabolic medicine, but I specialize in diabetes. I'm also an academic. I work at Imperial College London and lead a research group. And yeah, I have, what else is there to say about me? I like shoes.
Yes,
That
I've got
usually
to
comes across.
jump in with that. Yes.
Yeah, lots of nieces and nephews. Pretty boring life.
And you love your samosas. You haven't,
I love samosas,
yeah, yeah,
big
very important.
time. Do you
Very
know, I
important.
realized I hadn't been to my favorite samosa place all year
So,
the other
yeah,
day. Shocking.
got to
Yeah.
do that. Got to do that. Now,
Mm.
I have had the distinct privilege of also meeting your mum, who is a delightful person, and as I know, is a very important factor in your life. So, family-wise, big influences, so to speak.
Huge influences. Yeah, I forgot you met her. That was in India, right? At a
Yeah.
conference.
Mm,
Yes, huge influence. I have two older siblings, um, parents, like yours, immigrant parents.
mm,
They came over in the 60s and very family focused. Really, try to ground myself in the values that they've taught me,
mm.
which usually means I try to do my best and try not to get too worked up about things that are out of my hand. I think that's me.
Absolutely. That probably is how I would also sort of look at it. So I think you briefly touched upon, I mean, you do a quite a high-end job. You're an academic, you're a clinician. So at the present moment, tell us a little bit about the role you do, because you're not too far away, picked up a big role in where you are. Tell us a little bit about that. Go on.
Yeah, so I'm what's called a clinical academic, which apparently is a bit of a dying breed. So I mix up clinical work in the hospital where I do diabetes clinics. So those are at St. Mary's Hospital. And then the majority of my time is actually spent doing research, which is mostly around early onset type 2 diabetes, but actually a little bit of type 1, bit of precision medicine, got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, I would say. And so I'm a clinical associate professor in Imperial. I have a team that's growing, and we do a sort of mixture of human studies, big data, genetics to try and ultimately, I guess, improve care for people living with diabetes. And I think the role that you're talking about is, well, you can tell me, but recently became head of section for metabolic medicine in Imperial College London,
So
which,
typical Shivani, you're just saying it like just one of those things, but I think that's
yeah.
pretty big, right? Head of metabolic medicine Imperial. I think there's not many people who in the career probably will have that tagline on their CV. So that's quite big, I would have thought.
Well, um, maybe.
Yeah, Shivani,
Shivani.
for those of you listeners, this is Shivani to the T.
Yeah,
Always very sort of self-assuming in that sense.
unassuming. Yeah.
But I would say so. Of all the things you've done, I'll give you my view. Is that I'm always looking for people who do really good research, and we'll touch upon this. But in my view, in a policy role I've done, I see a lot of research which doesn't make much sense, and you feel like the research is done for papers, points, going up in career. But my fundamental question then becomes, well, what is it changing in lives, or how is it changing
Mm.
things? But in that sort of journey, you have not got, in my view, one but two big things which can potentially change lives. So, what would be the top few researches that you have done, you're proud of, and slightly widening it? Is there beyond the work you have done anything out there that excites you about what's coming through?
Yeah, thanks. And I think you're right. I think research has to benefit patients. And I started out as doing very molecular-based research in a lab, and now I do very patient-facing research. So I can see across the spectrum how both of those things are important, but that certainly the more discovery side of research has to have tangible patient benefit. And if it's not getting there, then there's a problem. So I think the thing that I'm most proud of at the moment is around the early onset type 2 diabetes work, which you've obviously been involved in as well. So we first analyzed the national diabetes audit data and showed probably there's a lot more now, but 140,000 people living with type 2 under 40, which is, of course, much bigger than we'd ever thought. Type 2 diabetes typically being a disease of older age. And, this is a problem because, as many people have shown, the younger you are when you're diagnosed, the earlier you are to die, and the more likely you are to develop complications. And so, I guess what I'm particularly proud of is, I mean, highlighting the numbers is great, right? But data is only good if you do something with it. And we were able to work with other experts and the NHS England Diabetes Programme and come up with a specific intervention for these young people with type 2, which is called the T2 Day Programme, that is now, I think, in the second year of three, and aims to just improve awareness of early onset type 2. Most GP practices might have a handful of them amongst a sort of haystack of older onset type 2, but also try to improve outcomes. So that's actually been a really important career milestone for me because when you're beginning your academic journey and you're working in labs, either as an integrated BSc student at medical school or ultimately your PhD student, actually having outcomes that affect patients just seems like a distant dream. You just wouldn't even think that that could happen. Unfortunately, now that that has happened for me, now for me, everything has become about, well, what's in it for patients? How
Mm.
does this get to patients?
Yeah.
And so the other aspect of my research, just to highlight, is the sort of genetics and precision medicine work, which I mean, I did my PhD looking for monogenic diabetes in Asian and Black people, which at that point had been really poorly reported on. And that's led to some change in guidelines around who we test for monogenic diabetes, and again, better awareness. And that sort of led me into the precision medicine work, which has a more international spin about how we ensure that diabetes research reaches diverse ancestries and resource settings. That's a sort of 2-minute précis of everything that
Yeah,
I
no, no,
do.
no.
Yeah.
I think, what I always say is that I think research, as we said at the very beginning, has got to be something, when I look at, for example, let's take the work of Andrew Hattersley himself,
Mm,
right? And
mm,
that's life-changing research, if that makes sense. You are genuinely going to change life by saying, oh, hey, you don't need insulin or you need little, whatever be the case. And I think the young type 2 diabetes is such an exciting place where your return of investment could be so more. And then if you can tie it in with precision medicine, where you're talking about, do you know what, this drug works better for that?
mm,
I think that's phenomenal. I mean, and it's ironic slightly ironic in a country or in an environment where people say, oh, we need to do genetic screening as soon as babies are born and do everything. And you go like, yeah, but there's research out there where you can do a bit more nuanced work rather than such a wide scattergun. What about you in the world of academia or clinical world? I mean, as you said, you were that sort of you have got a saddle on both sides of the camp. I mean, what are your dislike? I wouldn't say dislikes. I think things you which probably would be a peeve or annoys you, or you feel like, do you know what? If that was better, life would be better. Full stop. Is there something like that? I mean, it doesn't have to be two or three, but just generally speaking,
mm.
it jumps out at you.
I think that, look, I mean, it's no secret that there's a shortage of clinical academics. I
Mhm.
alluded to that at the beginning. The
Mhm.
the the current sort of clinical academic cohort is aging and close to retiring. And if you sort of estimate how many people should be coming through to fill those gaps, there's a massive shortfall. And I would say that there are some real barriers that make doing clinical research or juggling the two quite challenging within the NHS. There's been some really great articles around this in the Financial Times and other outlets about how, getting funding is hard. You have to do all these extra bits in your free time for the resident doctors that are coming through and thinking about it. And it's extremely competitive at the moment. But fundamentally, it is the best decision I made. I absolutely love the variety, and sitting at this interface between the two is really exciting on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of bureaucracy, the timelines and coming up with an idea, writing a grant. 9 months later, you might get an interview. 3 months after that, you activate the grant. Then you take 6 months to sign contracts and get the money in. Then you start recruiting 3 months after that. I mean, sometimes your research question becomes obsolete because let's take Libra, for example. A bunch of people were doing CGM-based research, and in the time it took to run those trials, the national guidelines changed thanks to your work and advocacy. So research, the sort of the pipeline is so slow
So, yeah, I agree.
that I've gone grey slightly going through this. So I would love to change that. I would love to sort of rip it up and rebuild how we
Yeah.
deliver that.
So I think people who are listening, if you're a resident doctor and stuff, I think, this is an exciting career to look at. And I think there is a responsibility, my personal view in workforce and colleges, etc., to pick that up because I think clinical academics are a dying breed. And you have this dichotomy where you one or the other. And one of the frustrations that you and I have talked about, we meet academics who seem to have absolutely no realization of the clinical
Mm,
side of it as to how you would make it happen. And I
yeah,
think then both parties end up getting frustrated about no progress. Um,
totally. Yeah, agree.
all right. One thing in your life you would change if you could. And it basically encompasses everything. I'm not just saying, there's one thing you could change, or you may not want anything to change. You're an incredibly successful person where you are. Anything you would want to change at all over the last whatever?
Oh my God, just now, I didn't know you were going to ask me that, and about 50 million things went through my head, of which many can't be mentioned in this. No, I'll turn it into a joke, but this is true. I really would like a little puppy.
Well, yeah, there's still time.
No, I know. It's just life is busy. I don't think I can look after myself, let alone a puppy.
That is very true. Puppy is like a full-time commitment, that much I'll give you. But yeah,
Yeah,
they make you happy. And they're always happy.
I love
I think they're
puppies.
they're better than
Yeah,
human beings. I've always said dogs, there is it's unconditional love, so that's great.
yeah.
What so I think on the same vein, I mean, what advice would you give to Shivani, who was, I don't know, 22 years old, come into a medicine? What would the Shivani of now tell the Shivani of then? Would you give her any advice as to what's coming and what next up?
I think that, what, my career has gone pretty much the way that I wanted it to when I was in my 20s. I had a very clear idea that I wanted to be a clinical academic, even when I was a medical student.
Mhm.
I think what I would tell her is to think even bigger than she had grand ambitions and has achieved a lot of them. But I think was as happens in we become institutionalized in the way that we think,
Mm.
and we become confined by, well, oh, that's not the done thing, that's frowned upon. And I think I don't have any big regrets. I never tend to look back, but I do think some of my decisions probably were confined or constrained a little bit because of that institutional thinking that we have in both in the NHS and in academia. And I would just say go and rip up the pages of that manual and do whatever you want, which I'm beginning to do now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, neutrally looking back, I would say that you are I would say, a bit of a role model for a lot of people, right? I know a lot of trainees who will talk to
Mm,
me about you. I mean, don't forget, because we always hear, and I'll be interested to hear your views about it, because you see paper, you see data, you hear people saying that you have the issues of being a woman, you come from a South Asian background, and you battle through to being where you are. But I use the word battle through in inverted commas. Has it been one for you? I mean, has it been, is the data just the data? Is it something that you have faced? Has it been a barrier for you that you've had to work hard? Or what's your view about that? Because you've got a intersectionality of two things
mm.
going. Is that something that you have faced? And what's your views on that?
It's a great question. You know, I have progressed through my career as a person. I've never really thought, oh, I'm a woman or a minority. Certainly as a resident doctor, I never thought that.
Mhm,
Um, and I never really felt discriminated against in any way. But now when I look back, I think, of course, there were instances and people that where that was definitely playing a part.
mhm,
And almost certainly there will have been times that it hindered my progress that I wasn't necessarily aware of. But, you know, my parents and a lot of children of immigrants' parents told them that if you want to succeed, you have to be 200% as good. You know, you have to, and that's sort of, that was imbibed in me from a young age. And so I've always strived to, I always thought that it's a meritocracy. And if you do really, really well, then you will succeed. And so I think that's still what I tell people. However, I would say in the last 10 years of my career, I have this added experience of how the system can work against you and how you can leverage the system to work in your favor. And this has come from sort of mentoring resident doctors and researchers coming through and hearing of their challenges. And then you have a sort of penny drop moment of, oh, was that what was going on with me? 15, because I feel like I was a bit stupid in my 20s, not clocking the kinds of things that were going on and the sort of subtle discrimination. And I think the one more thing that I would say to that is that obviously at the moment, diversity, at least in this country, not in the US, but diversity is a key thing. You know, we talk about having diversity in conference panels and this concept of manels and so I had a few comments in the last few years from men saying, do you think you got that because you're a woman? Or do you think you got that because you tick two diversity boxes? And and in fact, someone actually invited me to give a keynote, and they said, "Don't take this the wrong way, but you look right for it." And I'm not going to lie, I thought, "How dare you say that to me?" But then I had this other epiphany. I don't know what you think about this, which is I thought there would have been a million times where I didn't get things because I was a brown woman. So if there's now 3 or 4 times when I am getting it because I am a brown woman, who cares? And so I've made my peace with that.
I think also, I think neutrally to, I always say this, the work I do in this field. And my view to that is people will be lucky to do one thing in their life. And, we look around us and people will be lucky to do one big game changer in town, right? In the sense
Mm,
of, for example, just the research or the science, the focus on young type 2 diabetes. Because without your work, the focus wouldn't happen, right? Your work is the crux on which it's sat. And, the conversations we had, me, you, Jonathan Banerjee, all of us together to get there. But I have two. And I think you are now moved on from being just a national sort of thing. You're very international, quite rightly recognized. You're doing all this sort of big thing and quite absolutely. So I think, I've got a philosophy which I'll say that in Hindi and I'll translate it for our viewers which basically the Hindi is बात उन्हीं की होती है जिसमें बात होती है. So
mm,
people will only talk about you if you're worth talking about, and there will be a degree of professional jealousy, but I also say to people is that jealousy is also earned, right?
Yeah.
If you didn't do anything, why would anybody be jealous of you? So I think these are good things. This is just parts of the human being. That's is my philosophy in life.
Mm.
Jealousy is earned. What can I say? People are people. So, final few things, but I'm going to touch upon one thing which because I know that's close to your heart, which is you've talked about young type 2 diabetes. You've talked about the precision medicine. And to those who are listening, please look up the work that's been done. There's some fantastic papers out there if you're so inclined. But I'm going to ask you, because this is a topic which does sort of wake you up, if that makes sense, which is the way obesity is being treated in the
Oh,
NHS. I knew,
yeah.
see? What's your, I mean, it is a bit of a mess. And I've done a podcast before with Stephanie Di Giorgio on this.
Mm.
What is one thing you would advise everybody to do at the moment? Because at the moment it seems like everything's in limbo, if that makes sense. And it's already starting to come out. You see papers reporting it, and it's what is one, and I know it's a very tricky question. What is one thing you may advise either policymakers or Department of Health people? What is it that they are absolutely ducking away from? Is there anything in particular that jumps out for you, or even more wider than that?
Oh, it's another great question. I mean, the horse has bolted on this, hasn't it? It really, really has. These and we really need to be forward thinking. We are stuck in the dark ages rationing these medicines for good reasons, that they are being priced
Mm,
extremely high.
yeah.
So I'm not saying that, we want to bankrupt the NHS, but the horse has bolted. We need to, and I'm not sure I have the answer, but what I would say is that we need to think a million times bigger than we are thinking. We have a national health service that is free at the point of access. We have data on everyone. It's free, okay? We are positioned more than any other country
Mm,
to be very innovative in how we deploy these medicines. And, tier three is not fit for purpose. So what is that? What is that new lifestyle and behavior? Where is it happening? It needs to go right to the patient's home. And it needs to start at young ages. Young type 2 is going up. These people die 15 years earlier. They are the people living with obesity from childhood. So it needs a bottom-up approach, not this top-down approach. Um, you asked me what I was excited about, something that I'm hugely excited about without sounding like a politician is AI and its ability to actually support young people in particular with self-management and health behaviors. So it needs to be bottom up, not top down. And in terms of the costs of the medicines, yeah, I mean, this is a big issue. I understand why NICE said what they said, and I understand why colleagues of ours have made the decisions that they made. However, we could be radical in England.
National Director of Diabetes and Obesity someday, then, Shivani.
I don't know.
Who knows?
I
Who knows?
want to be on a beach somewhere with my villa, whatever gets me the villa on
With
the
and the
beach
puppy and the puppy.
and the
There's nothing.
puppy and the puppy. Yeah.
Okay, final few questions for you.
Yeah.
Top two or three influences for you in your life and career. Who would you name them?
Influencers. My gosh, there's so many. Can I just say my top tip if you're a resident doctor is just surround yourself with people that you admire.
Hmm.
We meet up, don't we, from time to time, and it's just a check-in. And I've done that throughout my career with various people.
Hmm.
I don't want to name various people because I think if anyone listens, I mean, like, there's so many really important people in my career. Um, the list is endless. I will
You
do
will
it.
do
I will
very
just
well.
upset someone
You will do
if I
very well
if
as the
I
National
only mention
Director
a
of
few.
Diabetes and Obesity. You are absolutely ready. All right. And okay, so slightly, and finally finishing with this thing is Star Trek or Marvel, Shivani?
Oh gosh, that
Star
is
Wars
really
or
hard.
Marvel? Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel. What would you choose if you had a choice?
Oh my goodness. I think probably. Oh, I grew up as a Trekkie, but can I just say I was both Star Wars and a Trekkie? But I have to say at the moment, I just find Marvel hugely entertaining. It just,
Okay.
especially the first and second phase of Marvel. Yeah.
Excellent. Final few words, Shivani, before we wrap up, because that's been fantastic, just touching up on lots of stuff. But final few words for you, for our listeners.
Well, I think firstly, if you are thinking about doing clinical research, come and talk to me.
Fantastic.
You can, my email is publicly available. I would love to hear from you. And secondly, because we have been talking a lot about resident doctors, but also whatever career stage you're at, the thing I would actually, if you're listening and you think, oh, she's really successful, I would credit that success to obviously a supportive family, but actually the mentors that we just talked about. There's a list that is too long to mention, but go and talk to people. If you're stuck on your career choices, I've got a difficult decision to make. I've been lining up and talking to the right people, and that works for career decision. It works for collaboration as well. So my door's open if anybody wants to chat through career options about research or diabetes. But yeah, I think it's important that I end on that because I did highlight how difficult clinical academia is, but it's actually a really rewarding career.
Fabulous. And I tell you what, someday this YouTube video is going to be worth so much because they're like, oh my God, he's talking to Professor Dame Shivani Misra or something like that is going to happen. I'm telling you,
Mm,
you can bookmark this right now.
okay,
But thank you so
I'll
much for
take
your
your word for
time.
it.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. And to everybody else listening, as promised, I hope that was useful and entertaining at the same time. And yeah, so pass it on, have a listen, see what you think, and contact Shivani if you want to know more about research or send her a puppy. I don't know, whichever one you fancy.
The puppy would be good. The puppy would be good. Yeah.
Excellent. Look
Thanks,
after
Partha.
yourself, and we'll catch up again.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.